bit of an upside surprise on comps. The stock actually has been a good performer going into these results. What's the main takeaway from this quarter? Where does it leave you on the stock?
Yeah, so I think that the U.S. result of 4% was about in line with expectations. It was really more after the analyst day. China was talked about a lot. There was a lot of fears there, and they got to that 1 to 3% positive for the long term. That was at 1%. There were a lot of fears out there, actually, that could be negative, just given all the China noise that we'd heard. So I think that was the slight upside surprise in EPS as well, where they managed costs well in the face of rising labor. So I think those are the two upside surprises. The U.S., to me, we haven't had traffic growth there really in a couple of years. That's the concern while we're still equal weight. And also, if you look at the traffic growth, it's all ticket, so 4% ticket growth. The worry there for me is it's increasingly discretionary. If you look at kind of the drinks that they're selling, so more cold brew, nitro, higher price things that might not be as ritualistic as some of the traditional coffee drinks they sold.
So in other words, can't rely as much on the average ticket going up from this point on. Why does the market like it so much? It's kind of interesting because the street, I know you're neutral on it pretty much. Less than half the analysts are recommending it right now. There's still a bit of skepticism, what, about China mostly or the whole business? I
think China's a big piece of it. So remember, they bought in the rest of China last year. So it's a fully company-owned China model and fully company-owned U.S. model outside of some licensing in airports, et cetera. But in general, this is a company-owned model with a lot of leverage up and down if things go well or don't go so well. And it caught a big sort of defensive bid along with Yum and with McDonald's and others at the end of last year. So it's trading at about 25 times for a business that grows earnings at 10 to 12%. And if things don't go so well, that 10 to 12 goes negative fairly quickly, where a McDonald's or a Yum wouldn't. So I think it's catching a defensive bid in a time where I wouldn't have expected it, frankly.
What do you make of the pickup in their loyalty members? I mean, those are critical towards the company's success, right? Especially on the digital side of things.
To me, the big question about 2019 is they've done well with the current loyalty base. Can you convert more your sort of one-off guest into loyalty members, because those spend multiples of what your typical kind of one-off guest will spend?
How do they grow traffic, right? If traffic was flat and that's deemed to be an improvement, where do you go from there? You addressed it already, but how do you grow it?
It's tough. They've been throwing a lot of innovation at the wall. So think about what you buy in Starbucks now versus what you used to. Nitro, 550, cold coffee beverages that's something we never heard of a year ago. I think it's a lot of innovation, which again might not drive that ritualism that we'd seen in the past. But innovation, it's afternoon. They do well in the mornings. The afternoon is soft for them. It got a little bit better this quarter, but it's a place that they have some room to grow.
Coffee happy hour, as they call it. Right?
When you look at, real quick, Dunkin' Donuts versus Starbucks, when you look at that, the franchise model versus the corporate-owned model, Dunkin' is outperformed. Would you still stay there based on maybe a lack of perception that China is the huge headwind?
I like Dunkin' better. It is more U.S.-centric. And the franchise model, to your point, given where we are in the cycle, I think that's an easier place to be, just given that the ups and downs aren't going to drive EPS growth that much one way or the other. And in general, we like the new CEO at Dunkin'. I think he's doing the right things in terms of driving. Their beverage growth platforms are in the early stages. So espresso really just relaunched this past quarter. I think there's some legs there over time.